Hello.
Sorry. Hello, this is Jarek.
And this is Hunter
Welcome to the Argonauts world building
podcast.
podcast.
And today we're going to talk about the very first arc, beyond the characters' introductions, the so-called tournament arc. This arc is, to be more specific, what the tournament is it is the qualifier, effectively, for becoming a member of the Argonauts. Because they get quite a lot of applicants, or rather, they select quite a lot of applicants from across the nation.
From those joining the Pantheon program.
Yeah. And they select those who seem to be the most promising, whether that be the strongest powers, most intelligent applicants, best hit track records. And their method of determining it, and to bring in a little more government support for the Argonauts.
And just money.
In general.
Everything, yeah.
Is to host a tournament after a certain stage of their training. They take them through a couple initial stages of determining what exactly their particular abilities are, and some basic weeding out of people who may be not qualified.
And the training segments might actually still be the first round might be a show that runs.
Yeah. And of course, this is all publicly televised.
Yeah. So the first part is a weekly, basically challenges themed reality TV show that ends in a tournament, basically.
Yes. That is the structure that they use for this. And one of the initial stages, they determine what everyone's powers are. And by the end, they select a handful of applicants. I don't think it's necessarily a precise number, honestly. No, I think that's the solution to our problem.
Yeah.
Is they pick...
the winner is guaranteed.
The winner is guaranteed for combat proof.
And get some prize money.
Yeah. But they usually select a couple other members. And it's basically left up to the leaders of the Argonauts. They may pick individual members. They may pick multiple. Just whoever they saw that they went, this person is definitely qualified. Yeah.
Yeah, because basically Argonauts are trained up to be Argonauts from the time they join the organization. They have at the beginning of the show, our main characters are the rookie tier of that team.
Yes. The major important characters that are introduced in this particular arc are TK. Full name, what was it? We had a full name for him. It was...
Travis Klein or something like that?
Yes, I think, Travis Klein. That actually sounds correct. Travis Klein. And he is, of course, blessed with the power of telekinesis. He is the man to beat, so to speak, at the tournament.
The top seed once it gets to the tournament portion of the show.
His powers are pretty strong, and in particular, he's quite good at the tournament because he's realized the easy solution of simply picking up his opponents and wringing them out. And he achieves most of his things similarly. And this is part of why he was, of course, accepted into the thing at first, is because he does have a very good, thoughtful use of his powers. However, he is a bit of an asshole about it because he realizes that his power is one of the best among the current applicants. And he's more than willing to take advantage of that. One more. The next major side character is someone currently referred to only as the Enhancer.
And he has the power to enhance qualities of an object. He can bring out that he touches. He can make them harder, make them heavier, make them
more flexible.
Any such thing.
Yeah. And he uses this, the basic applications of which are that he achieves effective super strength, or at least for striking purposes.
Yeah, he can't do it to himself, but he can do it to the items he's holding and make his gloves into basically iron.
Okay, it's not quite super strength, but he effectively achieves armor without needing to have
He hits you with armor and stuff. It's better defensively than it is offensively.
Yes.
Though he can make a sword sharper and
things like that, yes.
Faster.
He is best when equipped with things. There is the luck manipulator, who is almost more of just kind of a fun thought process on what, if you tried to quantify someone like that, what they'd end up with. Which, of course, proves problematic for the organization based on the very nature of his power.
Making sure that he wasn't just bullshitting them when he said he had good luck. And it was just like, no, I'm serious.
Probably the reason they got him is he probably did something ridiculous.
I do
have an unbeaten win streak at like a casino or something like that.
I did a lot of gambling. I stopped losing.
Yeah, just completely. I believe the
I've
effective.
won the lottery 5 times.
I believe the final test that they had to prove that he did in fact have luck manipulation, the one at least in my head was they had him roll a die 100 times, and they had a computer generate a random number from 1 to 6 that the die result should be.
Without showing him.
And the result was accurate around 90% as opposed to the expected, 1 in 6 chance.
1 in 36 chance that the sequence of he rolled and the sequence the computer rolled were the same.
You're right, 9 in 36.
1 in 36 for each instance of the
1
sequence.
in 6 to the...
1 in 36 to however many,
and he had about 90% accuracy throughout it, which was they were convinced.
They weren't quite convinced by the 100 coin flips being heads.
Yes, nor the die rolls where he simply got the highest result every time. But his fighting capability is decent, but he does rely heavily on his power.
His primary win that he should not have gotten in that tournament is at the very beginning of each match, they choose a random battlefield, and it chose a battlefield that completely favored him.
Yes.
And, didn't favor the guy who they were fighting.
Yeah.
He was fighting.
And the final major side character in this arc is an electricity manipulator. At this point, he's fairly run-of-the-mill in that regard. Can generate bolts of lightning, small fields of electricity, and such. But he's important because he is a character that returns later on as a proper member of the Argonauts, as does TK.
Possibly the Enhancer?
Possibly. I doubt the Luck Manipulator does. This is almost a side show to him.
Yeah.
He probably returns to his illustrious career in professional gambling until he's not allowed to gamble anywhere anymore.
Or sign up for the lottery, or bet on horses, or anything.
Because it's quite frankly, once they've proven that he has the power, honestly, that was the end of his luck. In that regard.
Another challenges before the tournament itself starts, and the challenge half of the show would include
a lot of which are competitive as well. To some extent.
Competitive challenges. Like one of the early ones might actually be, we're going to put you all in a massive arena with a bunch of John Smiths, and whoever takes out the most John Smiths,
gets a point.
Yeah. Every John Smith you take out is a point, and things like that.
Yeah, a lot of tests intended to thin the herd. These run the gambit from 100-meter dashes to punch strength measuring to high jumping, basically anything.
I imagine the fitness
a lot of them are the
one challenge basically.
That would make sense.
They roll it up into one challenge. Other challenges include a hostage situation, things that test what you'll be doing.
Yeah.
Like simulated superhero situations. Here's a hostage situation. Here's a one of you play a villain trying to protect something, or that the hero needs to destroy, or vice versa. They're briefed differently.
Yeah. Some of the more notable aspects of, I guess, what happens in this particular arc is it's the first look into people realizing that Will's powers are not as simple as he seems to think they are. This comes from the fact that everyone has a full medical diagnostic performed on them. They're x-rayed, they're given basic, like fitness tests, like, how long can you run a proper mile, etc. And Will's turned some unusual results.
The two things they notice.
He doesn't show up very much on x-rays.
He does, but it seems a little too perfect.
Yes, they basically just get a perfect anatomical skeleton pictured back.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with it or anything
At
like
all.
that. In fact, with some research, someone could probably find the exact picture that it is, basically, from whatever textbook he read as a kid.
It's far too perfect. It's like a picture of a skeleton. more than an actual skeleton.
Yeah. His insides might not even be that perfect.
Yeah.
It's just what showed up when they x-rayed him.
Yeah. Other unusual things include when they perform an MRI on him, nothing comes back out of that. They
also know the MRI is actually one of the ways they measure how much your power is working and like how good it is. Because they've isolated the portion in the brain that's in charge of the Neo effect, and his lights up like nothing they've ever seen, which is confusing to them considering how average
his power seems. Yes, because his power does still at this point appear to basically just be super physicals.
Because in that case, how much that lights up. Because another way to describe this is all their powers are specialized reality warping.
Yes.
They warp reality to meet some expectation at some point, at which point their ability to warp reality specialized to doing whatever it is that it accomplished first.
Yeah.
And one of the ways they can measure, one of the measurements that they can make on this is how far from reality can it warp it. His
doesn't appear to be.
His doesn't appear to be very far, but according to the MRI, it was quite far indeed.
Yeah, which is kind of a result they can't quantify at this point in time.
And the other thing that happens is that during they give him a generic fitness test just to see if he even is superhuman, and he gets pretty. Like above average, but within
above
average
range.
For his age, but within the human range, above average for his age and build, especially.
Yeah. But on a suspicion, Gregor decides to hold a second test,
and he gets not only the exact same results,
but he gets the same results under massively increased gravity, which didn't seem to be
any sort of notice to him at all, because he wasn't told that there was massively increased gravity.
Which is probably what passes him past the fitness round itself.
Yeah, it's what even convinced them that he was worth hiring into the Pantheon program at all.
Yeah. So, other notable moments include, this is when Marcus starts really training his powers a lot, because he sees what everyone else is capable of.
He's been using it for weapons
and very simple applications. He hasn't thought about what it can do at all before this point.
Yeah, like
he's assumed it was steel and never thought twice about it.
Yeah, he assumed it was steel because it's just the most generic
looking metal. Yeah.
When you think metal, when someone tells you metal, the metal you imagine is most likely steel.
Or like iron.
Or iron, but probably steel, because iron is black, and most people don't imagine that.
Yeah. But this is when he starts actually trying to push the limits of what he can do in terms of properties. And this is when he starts getting some of the first minor property manipulation from his powers.
They also find out at one point that it's immune to acid, just to test, which goes into something else, is that it is imaginary matter, so to speak. It
doesn't actually hold the properties of steel, though it holds properties that
it's not
very
actually steel. It just has the properties of steel. And when after seeing it not react to acid that should melt through steel, examine it under an
electron microscope, it appears to simply be a contiguous surface.
Yeah, it is
no atomic makeup
of some sort. There's no atomic makeup, and the thing that comes from this is, while it has physical properties, it does not have chemical properties.
Yeah, because there is no.
It does not interact with the atoms around it,
not in the way that atoms do.
No, not in the way that atoms
do. It exerts
force
on things, but that's basically all it does.
It exerts physical force and can conduct heat and other such forms of energy.
Yeah, it has basic physical properties.
But chemical, none of the above, basically.
Yeah. This is also the... honestly, no, actually not yet. During the fitness pre-tournament such, the notable moment is Jason defeating a teleporter in a 100-meter dash. Simply because of the teleporter makes a minor error in that he teleports past the finish line, which has a small little thing to detect when you cross it. And so he spends a moment in celebration,
and then steps back and steps forward again.
Yeah, realizing he hasn't crossed the line, he pushes his leg back through it. But by the time he's done so, Jason has already passed the line, and they decide to take the computer record because in a real life scenario, error like that, making a mistake, the person who got it done still got it done, regardless of whether it seems like you should have or not. Yeah. That's a theme almost to this arc, is that a lot of the challenges are to the letter rather than to the spirit. Because in a situation where you're trying to train people with powers and you're not trying to constrain them too much, you want them to be able to have more creative solutions and also to take into account exact parameters.
To game or to fail to game, or however it may be.
Yeah. This is somewhat intentional. They don't want people... It's both that they don't...
Can I look at the notes?
Yeah. Is there anything else within the selection tests?
What would be some other simulation challenges besides hostage situation, taking on as many people as you can?
I mean... Shoot. We'd want about how many of those, Jared?
Enough to narrow down a large amount of people to like 16 or 32.
So quite a few. Most of them would probably be somewhat montaged.
Yes, most of them are montaged. You get to see the challenge, and the challenge doesn't take much time. Most of the episodes of the reality TV show focus on the training, with a challenge at the end, and a certain number of people move forward and / are eliminated each week.
One second.
And a lot of the training is done in a very, very much done in a we're following the characters way, whereas the challenges are displayed in pretty much how they would be displayed in a reality TV show way.
Yeah. I don't believe anything else major happens during the selection arc. Or selection
portion of the arc. Yeah.
And by the time it gets narrowed down to the last 16...
Another note is that Marcus's mindset and the general attitude towards combat and all his martial arts training and just being a natural at it. He's also a natural to the military lifestyle.
Yes.
He does not have to adjust like everyone else does.
Yeah. He effectively has already held himself to a very tight schedule since he was fairly young. Yeah, high standards, a tight schedule since he was fairly young. Is there anything else?
Some people let's go down the list of who makes it to that tournament portion of it.
Yes.
So naturally our three main characters will Marcus, Jason, and Will.
Yeah.
Whichever order you want to say their names in.
Well, you just said Marcus and Jason.
I said Will.
You said our main characters will.
Marcus.
Oh, I thought you meant as in literally our main characters will, as in our main characters will make it.
Oh, no.
Okay, that threw me off.
A geomancer, who Will fights.
Yeah,
in the opening. And it comes up again during his fight against the telekinetic person in that, which we'll mention later. Yeah. A size changer, so someone who can become big, small.
Yeah.
At a moment's notice, anchored from any portion of their body, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Because according to math, when something undergoes a transformation like that, there is a point that did not move, and basically he figures out how to control what that point is.
Kind of like a center of gravity for it.
Yeah, the enhancer, a wind manipulator, or something else. I think we decided to go with something else for that.
We decided on something else.
Oh, what did we decide on? Oh, yeah, bone projector. Just a
marrow type.
Yeah. Or that guy from Naruto.
Yeah, depending on what your frame of reference is.
And A water manipulator, a shapeshifter,
Yep.
and very much a Toguro parasite
Yeah, type shapeshifter.
type
He's
shapeshifter.
more like Clayface, except his body's not made of a weird material.
Yeah.
It's still just made of flesh.
And yeah, so Toguro and...
Yeah, I know. It's just for people who don't have that kind of reference point.
Yeah, that's true. Not everyone watches.
Not everyone's watched the same animes we have.
And Toguro is
Clayface is a little more
from
universal.
Yu Yu Hakusho. Go watch it. It's
Yeah,
old,
if you
but
haven't,
good.
it's seriously, it's excellent. Go watch it.
It has one of the best tournaments in all of anime. Possibly the best tournament.
The Dark Tournament arc. Yeah, if nothing else, treat yourself to the Dark Tournament arc. It's an excellently run tournament. It has everything you want in a good tournament. Cheating, good fights, a rivalry. It's got everything.
I think we decided again. A Metal Man.
Yeah.
Who
He's a mildly returning character.
who will return at one point. The Luck Manipulator, a guy, an animator, kind of think. Okay, if you've seen the recent Power Rangers movie, think how the rock people come up.
Yeah, he can grant some amount of movement to objects, mostly in terms of just kind of becoming a conglomerate of mass and then
it
moving
moves
around a very goal.
He's not direct. They're not like something he has to puppeteer directly. He makes them with an order and they follow that order, sort of thing.
Yeah.
So it's not quite telekinesis confined to human form, but
yeah. The advantage being that he doesn't have to
see what they're seeing.
He doesn't have to see what they're doing. He doesn't have to focus on them or anything like that.
The teleporter makes it to the fight round.
Yeah.
And has a grudge against Jason. Electricity, and then there is one open slot.
I thought we decided. No, I'm pretty sure we decided on the last one.
I don't remember.
What was he replacing?
Someone who never misses, because that was just kind of lame.
Yeah, it's too little of a power.
Yeah.
For this kind of arc. I thought we did decide on a replacement.
It's written on a piece of paper that we didn't save.
Well, and an open spot. Who doesn't fight anyone, at least in the initial round?
If anyone has a suggestion for what to fill that open spot with.
Yes, please.
Please suggest it.
Weird powers are just fine. Whatever you can think of. So, Derek, what are the first round main character fights?
The first round main character fights is Will fights the Geomancer.
Yes, as mentioned before. Of course, these being main character fights are fights that the main cast do win.
Spoilers. But Will has a good fight with the Geomancer and actually shows off Will's endurance and damage and an ability to take damage for the first time more than anything else.
He basically, for the most part,
he basically wears the Geomancer down, like, because they have a certain amount of stamina they can put forth to their powers.
It drains some amount of energy. It varies depending on the individual. But...
yeah, and how efficient they've made it. Because there are two ways you can develop your powers. You can either specify how you're doing what you're accomplishing.
Well, you think about it a lot, rather.
Yeah, you
tell it. You
think about your power, and you either figure out how it does what it's doing,
or you think you figure out how it does what it's doing.
Yeah, you think about how to accomplish the same thing.
And it will take on the more specific properties.
And it will take the more specific properties, which will also make it more efficient at doing what it is you thought about how it did, unless you think of a very inefficient way to do it. But you do a smaller change from reality to accomplish a bigger change from reality and stuff. Or you think about new applications of the power.
Yeah, which is the route that Jason goes down.
Will doesn't go down either route. He just kind of brute forces
honestly, both Jason and Marcus think about applications rather than going down the route of how it does it.
Marcus is mostly thinking about how it does it and figuring out that the properties are arbitrary.
Yeah. So
and then that he can change the properties.
So applications.
He goes back a step and then does applications from the back step.
Yes. It's not a simple just like choices. It's just exact. It is a matter of how you think it works.
Meditation is actually meditating on your power is actually a very good way to increase your power. Learning to meditate is something they do learn in this.
Yes, because it's very important to be able to just think about.
That might actually be one of the challenge episodes is to meditate on your powers, and then
I think that'd be more just
a
training
new
rather
way
than-
it developed that week.
And if you couldn't come up with a new application, you're just done.
You're done, yeah. If you couldn't develop your power.
If you
in
couldn't
some
think
way.
of something, if you didn't learn something new about it,
Yeah, either.
something new it can do, a way it works, or something,
Yes. Change your powers in some way.
because you're not capable of enough growth, basically.
And yeah, because that is how you grow your powers in this universe.
So what does Will realize about his powers?
Will realizes. Well, we'll have to think on that.
Yeah, we'll have to think on that. But that's probably where he gets something like not realizing he can hold his breath indefinitely, or something like that.
Or, yeah. Either that or that there's no plateau to him working out. He might not be great at the meditation part of the making his powers work better.
Because
He might just attain a new level to his power. That.
Failing a single challenge isn't necessarily a fail either.
Yeah.
It is points, effectively. There is some way that they tally up how you did on all the various
And whoever
challenges
has the least amount of points
goes out.
or not even
They take the top so many, the top 16.
by the tournament
end.
portion of it.
The rest aren't even necessarily just told to go home. They go to various jobs across the other parts of Pantheon.
Yeah, either to be a soldier or to be a scientist or whatever. Because Pantheon also has a science, neo-driven science division, which makes leaps and bounds because they have, for example, someone we thought up of once is the room temperature guy, who he can't make things hotter or colder necessarily.
He makes the average of temperature within the area that he's in.
Room temperature.
Yeah. And
It's
simultaneously an incredible power and a terrible power.
And he is amazing for research because he can keep things from overheating
Things
and
like
other
that.
such things.
Yes. You can test the effects of rapid temperature change.
Or rapid temperature change, yes. Geomancer versus Will. Wind or the bone shooter guy goes up against TK just to show that shooting projectiles at him isn't gonna work.
TK is the other star character of the tournament.
He's the number one seed, the one with the most points by the time they get to the tournament portion.
Yeah. And that makes him the most major side character of the arc.
Because he is the rival to all the main characters, basically. Because
they're all worried they'll end up
all of them.
Yeah, and they're all worried that they'll end up against him because none of them, as far as they're aware, at least, have a particular counter to his method of winning the tournament. He's honestly probably not very popular with the fans.
Probably not.
Because he wins tournaments in a very simple fashion. Which, admittedly, the Argonauts themselves do appreciate the thought that he realized that there were parameters and he could cheat them.
Yes. But it is and when they're cutting the show, his fights are not they don't spend a lot of time on his fights.
No, they do
because
not.
his fights don't take a lot of time.
His fights are literally all under a minute, most likely.
Yes, because he can just pick them up and ring them out.
And he might spend the time to deflect a few attacks or whatever just to show off. But he never draws them out.
Any amount of actual fight length comes from him showing off.
Yeah. But he never draws it out.
Marcus goes up against the Metal Man, and that ends with him because
effectively, as he can create metal, the other guy becomes as tough as steel. And he wins by being able to generate materials tougher than steel.
And also just kind of takes advantage of the concept that the guy still thinks he's human when he's metal, and hits him across the head with a metal bat. Really, really fucking hard.
So he only thinks of the outer layers of himself.
Yeah, he basically only thinks of the outer layers of himself as metal at the time. And basically Marcus gives him a concussion.
Yes.
The luck is not a main character fight, but luck manipulator versus animator. This one ends mostly when it began, because instead of getting, say, the park or the quarry, they get a rooftop. Anything he animates immediately falls through the hole it made, and he gets very easily just punched out.
Yeah, the luck manipulator isn't like the most fighty guy, but more than fighty enough to be the person who can't really do much back.
Because they've been working out and been trained, and by the time they get to the tournament arc, they can at least throw it.
And when it comes to a straight fist-to-fist fight, even if he's not physically superior, he has luck on his side. His blows tend to hit more painfully.
He can successfully land a haymaker the first time every time.
And his opponent can't seem to.
And such things. Jason gets a grudge match against the teleporter.
It's a decent
fight because the guy can dodge pretty readily.
But he does manage to outthink. He wins by managing to outthink the guy and figure out where he's going to end up. Because the issue the teleporter has is he thinks very simplistically about how to use his power. And so after a little bit of fighting, Jason's capable of figuring out his pattern to where he would figure to teleport. Because he doesn't do it randomly. That's not how he thinks. And Jason figures out his pattern and manages to land a few choice blows. And the fight is over.
Then we get to round 2. Will goes up against the Enhancer, who fought against...
Yeah, just list out all the round 1 fights.
Alright. The non-main character fights from that are the Size Changer versus the Enhancer. And that's when it reveals the Enhancer kind of goes too far in a fight. He ends up breaking the Size Changer's arm and a leg on the guy.
Yeah.
After he breaks the arm and the fight's over, but he goes to break the leg before the guy can surrender.
Yeah. And otherwise, though, it is a fairly close fight.
It is a good one-on-one slugfest of a fight.
Yes, because both are fairly tough customers. More so than they are hard hit.
Scan in our tournament fights, just put up when we mention the...
Yeah, it's a good idea.
Just so we have visuals.
Honestly, they're both probably tougher more than they are hard hitters.
Yeah. Size Changer does his good stuff. The Enhancer.
Including shrinking dodges. Even growing dodges.
Yeah, things like that. And Water Manipulator versus Shapeshifter. The Shapeshifter can grow gills. That is the main thing that wins him this fight. Is the Water Manipulator hasn't quite gotten to Water Blade levels.
He can hit him with forceful
bursts. He can do forceful water bursts, but he can't quite do the pressure enough pressure to cut or to cut flesh.
Yeah. Oh, which is not necessary to win a tournament.
It's not necessary to win.
But he can't.
But it is
simply wring him out. And the Shapeshifter is also capable
of... The Shapeshifter could transform into something that can swim upstream if he tries to flood him out. He can grow gills if he tries to. He can make his skin waterproof
so he doesn't get soaked throughout the fight. And in the end, when it comes down to a hand-to-hand fight, which it ends up coming down to, the Shapeshifter has the obvious edge.
And the one that doesn't have a fight in this arc right now is in this round is the electricity guy,
who does win his
fight,
to
the next round. We just haven't decided who he goes on to the next round
against,
or who he wins against to go on to the next round. Come on. Will versus the Enhancer.
Is that round 2?
That is round 2. We're now entering round 2. Something they find out there is that Will's punches, one of the typical Enhancer things is he enhances his shirt like armor.
Yeah, so his clothes are constantly like steel, basically.
But when Will punches him, it kind of just bends like a normal shirt.
Yeah.
And the fact that he gets in a good blow when he's not expecting a good blow knocks the air out of the Enhancer very early on.
And it puts him at a disadvantage.
Puts him at a pretty good disadvantage. Not the longest of the fights in the arc.
No, the most of the Enhancer is thrown off by the fact that his basic defensive strategy doesn't work against Will, it seems.
Yeah. Will
hits him just as hard as a normal person would hit a person wearing a shirt.
And by normal, we mean someone who's a pretty strong.
But as in person. Within human limits.
Yeah. Telekinesis guy goes up against a Shapeshifter. This is the first fight he wins by just... no, not the first fight he wins by wringing someone out, but...
He wins the previous one.
Yeah, he does win the previous one by wringing
though this one probably has a substantial... Actually, the Shapeshifter probably resists a little bit. It's more of a fight than the previous one, because the Shapeshifter, once he's picked up, does do things such as extend his body so that he can still touch the arena, and things like that. But... in the end, it comes down to the fact that he can push for much longer and much harder and much faster than the Shapeshifter can grow.
According to the notes, this one might actually get to the point. That might actually get to the point where he just goes for a beat down knockout win against him, and just picks him up, bashes him against the ground, on and so forth.
Until he stops shape. Because, actually, the issue is probably that he tries to throw him out.
And the shapeshifter
and extends his legs out. Kind of wackily, but extends his legs out and manages to get a grip on the stadium.
Yeah, and so he goes for...
He knocks him out and then throws him out. He at least knocks him until he has trouble shape-shifting and then throws him out of this arena.
Marcus goes up against the luck manipulator, which is when the luck manipulator's luck kind of runs out.
Also, as a note of the TK one, one of the things that is noted from this is that his solutions, while efficient, seem to be fairly simplistic. Even when fighting someone he actually has to fight somewhat, he doesn't throw objects at them, he doesn't go for anything like that. He still resorts to just picking them up and just hitting them against surfaces until they can't resist anymore.
Yes, and Jason gets one of his big fights of this arc against the electricity manipulator. He's not quite faster than lightning at this point. No,
not nearly, honestly.
But
he is faster
than the
man's
one
reaction
stresses
time.
His regeneration mostly.
Yeah. It's partially that he's slightly faster than his reaction time, which does allow him to avoid, like how people in real life dodge guns. You don't dodge the bullet, obviously, you dodge the person. You dodge the person taking the shot. You dodge their arm. You aim dodge, that's the term I was looking for. But the electricity manipulator realizes this is what's being done and sets out a field.
Yeah, basically one of the things he learned he can do, or the way he figured out his electricity works, is he's kind of at the time can somewhat manipulate the charge of objects. So it makes his charge really high or low.
So anything that gets too close to him gets shocked.
Yeah.
It'd be low, I believe.
High or low, whichever.
Yeah, whichever is the one that conducts towards the other person. I forget.
I think they go from high to low, or low to high.
No, it's high to low. That's
low.
the principle of physics.
Yeah.
So he makes his charge very high, so that anyone that gets near him gets shocked.
Yeah. And if he gets a chance to target Jason, makes Jason's really low, so the lightning just auto targets him from then on. And Jason has to take him out before the lightning takes Jason out.
Yeah. Effectively, he stops being able to dodge the attacks, but his regeneration makes him tough enough that he's capable of beating the electricity manipulator before he himself gets knocked out. What's the What's the next fight?
The next fight goes into the next round.
What was the Marcus fight for this art? For this one?
There's not much to it.
Oh, that was Marcus's.
Yeah.
Who's Will's then?
Will goes up against the Enhancer.
Oh yeah, never mind. Sorry, Marcus's fight. A little more on that one against the luck manipulator. Basically comes down to the quite simple fact that luck wasn't going to cut it. The luck manipulator is no less lucky than he was in any previous fight. But luck alone, for every lucky thing that happens,
out.
Well, it's not even that. It's that for every lucky thing that happens for him, whether that's Marcus slipping, him managing to get off a perfect haymaker or hit him in the kidneys or whatever without aiming well, Marcus has a skillful counter to anything that could happen within their fight.
Yeah, even if the luck manipulator isn't keeping track of where he's throwing that punch, Marcus is.
Yeah. Marcus can effectively... luck is not a factor when you fight Marcus. You have to actually be more skillful, or at least at the level that his luck manipulation was at. It was not sufficient.
Especially since, according to this, it took place in just a straight arena.
Yeah, it was the luckiest encounter for... I don't know.
Or
maybe a really obstruct... I mean, then again, his luck isn't perfect.
His luck isn't perfect. It might be the 1% or the 10% chance.
Yeah.
Round 3, which we get into, is the semifinals of the tournament.
All right. Nice.
Will fights TK, which
is one of the biggest fights of this arc.
It's Will's triumphant, one of Will's big triumphant moments of this arc, in that when TK can't directly manipulate Will, so none of his usual strategies work. And Will fought a better telekinetic fighter
with the Geomancer.
With the Geomancer, and he basically makes him sorely aware of this.
Yes. This is where TK realizes that
the guy can't hit a target worth...
he has bad aim. He can throw things fairly fast, fairly hard, but he
bad aim, bad creativity. Basically panics the moment his first strategy didn't work.
What seemed like strategy it basically comes out to like that. What seemed like creative strategy may have been more of his basic solution to problems in general.
So you guys are going out?
Yeah.
It was back to stay. That's what it said on the thing I read.
Yeah, Will versus TK, and it comes out of the fact that TK also can't really take much of a beating.
And this really upsets the tourney since Will was on the lower half of the seeding.
However, I imagine this makes Will one of the fan favorites, given that TK assumes something of a heel role through his own actions and through the editing, because Tournament is, before released to the public, is decently edited, like most reality TV. TK has assumed something of a heel role. He denies the viewers a good fight basically every single time. And this pushes up Will's popularity massively for beating
Will's
TK.
previous fights were against the Enhancer, who was also a heel after he broke an arm and a leg of his opponent.
And the Geomancer, who didn't.
And the Geomancer, which is just a solid fight.
Yeah.
What's
the other semifinal match?
Marcus versus Jason.
This is one of the more down to the wire matches, being between two of the main characters. Jason does take it by the end.
Because Jason figured out a new ability to try and counter Marcus's heavy defensive ability.
And this is an ability he figured out between matches as well.
Yeah.
To some extent, knowing he was going to
From
go
one
up against
round
Marcus.
to the next round, he had to really think about how he was going to beat someone like Marcus.
Because one of his biggest issues at this point is he can't hit people through good armor. Because his punches aren't particularly strong.
Yeah, they're fast, which is good, but he's only flesh. So if someone's covered in, say, a metal suit, it's not going to really go through.
Probably something he realizes just sparring with the dummies and stuff that they have available to an extent, because he sees that other people
flesh dummies and stuff like that.
Other people are capable of bending and destroying some of these dummies, and he isn't really capable of doing that.
Right. So they have
honestly probably a fight that gets close to the end of the timer, assuming there is one. Most tournaments like this would have a timer.
Yeah, 30 minutes or something.
Yeah, and his fight draws almost the whole time, probably down to the last second type ordeal.
Very dramatic, very...
Yeah, but he does manage to... the application that he gains is he realizes that his body grows quite hot, and that he can bring this heat up from, like, just being a little hot to red hot by actually vibrating himself. It's something he works on for quite a long time, for the intervening time. And he manages to perfect is he can catch himself on fire, which is just enough of an edge to sear, partially because he can sear him. He can launch small, short-range fireballs and such.
But most of his damage through the armor comes from getting as much contact in a localized area as possible, such that the heat will conduct through.
Yeah, he mostly wears Marcus out in this fight. His heat's not good enough to melt and bend steel yet.
I think Marcus would probably collapse from heat exhaustion by the end of the fight.
Yeah,
that's mostly it. Not the burns.
Next arc, he's strong enough to actually weaken steel and metal and such. But this arc, he is not at that point. Or not even next arc, the arc after next.
Yeah, but by keeping around him and from all angles, heating up the air in that area, gets Marcus to collapse from heat exhaustion by the end of it.
Yes, or at least get weakened enough that he slips up and he is capable of taking advantage of gaps in his defenses and stuff to actually get a knockout, one way or the other. And in the final fight of the arc, of course, as if you're not blind, deaf, or whatever,
or don't know how tournament works,
is Marcus versus Will.
Will versus Jason.
Sorry, I said that completely wrong. Will
throw everyone for a loop. The winner moves forward. The loser moves forward,
as well as the winner. Or no, sorry, I'm just retarded. Don't worry about it. But See, I said it again. Will versus Jason. And this fight probably has a longer time limit, and it is another fairly down to the wire. Both fighters in the course of this fight take a lot of blows. Neither is very great, is the best defensively. I mean, obviously Jason has the defensive advantage, but the thing is, the few blows Will can get in,
really tough.
And also Will is way stronger than Jason.
Yeah,
Jason's strength at this point is still basically normal human strength.
And Will's smart enough to use Jason's speed against him on the blows he gets in. Clotheslines, judo tosses,
stuff like that. And basically, this fight comes down to who had the greater endurance. Because while Will is very tough, Jason does regenerate.
But I don't know. It depends on who we decide.
He doesn't regenerate too fast.
We haven't actually decided.
I thought we decided that Will took it.
I mean, it's still up to debate, basically. Right now, we're going with Will wins it, but we might not let Will win the first start. Depending on what tone we want the show to have.
It's close enough that even as the writers, we cannot perfectly call who wins that quite yet. But regardless of who wins, it ultimately comes down to willpower and endurance.
Like
more than anything else.
Down to the countdown, because the countdown is counting both of them out by the end of it. They're both, because basically what happens is Will calms down enough to listen for him instead of trying to see him.
Oh, yeah. Because Jason at this point is realizing that his biggest advantage against Will is he can simply stay faster than eyesight continuously and zip around the stage to make sure that Will basically can't see him in order to tag him.
So he starts paying attention to the footsteps he's making, and waits for him to stop coming from all directions and instead come from one direction.
Listen for when the sound starts growing from one direction.
He feigns for a dodge and instead plants himself in the ground directly in his path.
Which messes up Will. Will gets knocked flat on his ass, gets the wind knocked out of him severely.
They hit each other and tumble all the way to the edge of the arena and hit the wall really hard.
Yeah, and both of them are down.
Both of them are basically broken by the end of that.
Both of them are down for several seconds. And
it pretty much comes down to the 9 count before anyone.
Both of them are still. Jason is regenerating on the ground. Will is catching his breath and trying to get up on his arms,
despite broken leg and arm.
And in the very end, currently as we have it, Will manages to get up by actually planting himself on Jason's back as he attempts to stand up, and using him as a leverage to push himself to his feet.
And pushing Jason
back onto the ground for the ultimately
stands
for the 10
up
count.
Just in time for the 10 to count out Jason,
but not
him.
Then
collapsing out.
Yes.
Collapsing immediately. And doesn't wake up until after all the tournament. The rest of the ending ceremony and stuff is all through. And
Jason recovers a bit faster, though he probably spends the rest of the day in the hospital because his regeneration isn't so fast that he heals broken bones in minutes.
At least a lot of broken bones.
Yeah, at least a lot. Like an individual one is one thing, but
micro fractures are one.
No, so this is the other thing.
A full-on, possibly even a
through the skin.
External fracture.
Yeah, and the other thing is also something I kind of wanted to establish. I don't know if I've been clear about this before with you, but is one of the more effective things against Jason is actually hitting him with a lot of varied injuries, because his body it doesn't heal by the individual wound; it heals overall. It only has so much healing you can do at once. So if you break both his legs, it's harder for him to deal with than breaking an individual leg, waiting for that one to heal, and then breaking another leg.
True.
One moment. What's the post-tournament stuff then? I suppose they announced the winners. Oh, announcing who gets onto the team. Which in this case
in this case, Will gets it because he won the tournament overall.
Yeah. Marcus gets it for
under Christoph's selection.
Christoph's selection specifically. His reason that he gives is incredible willpower, forethought, skill,
and a decent power.
Yeah. But honestly, I honestly feel like the main reason
he overcomes a lot of very, very varied obstacles. Like the luck manipulator is more of a fight than we say it is.
Yes,
and the fact that he still managed to overcome bad luck versus good luck, and
effectively, honestly, I feel like he mostly selects him for the human aspects rather than the Neo aspects. Is because he looks at Marcus and he sees you have the power.
A great fighter.
He sees someone who is a better fighter than himself, even.
Yeah.
If not as powerful.
Overall, one of the things in the show is that if all three of the main characters
Had
were to
their
be
powers,
stripped of their
Marcus
powers,
would win every single time.
Marcus would win 10 out of 10.
Yeah. He would beat almost any of the other powered people in general.
Yeah.
Without powers.
He is like beyond peak human skill.
Yeah. He is that level, and he is peak human physicals by the end.
Yeah.
Which is, of course, always that slight stretch. But at this point, he is around like actual peak human around this point. In terms of physicals.
Peak human for his age.
Yeah, for his age, obviously. Because he is still,
Right, he has a few more
18,
years of
19?
19 or 20, so he still has like 2 to 3 more years, or the course of the show, basically.
Yeah, of physical development.
Of physical development to make.
Obviously, and then Jason gets selected on the third one on Gregor, I believe.
Gregor's decision, just because and on for mostly
he was impressed
the opposite
by the
reasons.
Yeah.
He's impressed, especially by from quarterfinals to semifinals power growth to try and to overcome Marcus.
Yeah,
an opponent that was predicted to win entirely through defense.
Yeah, figuring out how to apply his powers in a way to overcome a new fight, even if he couldn't increase his own personal skill enough to do so. Is there a fourth person, or is it just the three of them in this?
Nope, just the three of them. They are the
three
winners
passing
of
members
the Argonauts tournament.
The other ones that were considered but ultimately rejected. TK was considered for the strength of his power, but rejected ultimately for the
lack
poor
of
showing.
creativity and fighting ability.
Honestly, he mostly got rejected by the will fight.
Yeah, the will fight completely destroyed his reputation with them.
Yes, because it showed
he was probably going to be
one of
Gregor's
the selections, regardless of whether he won. And
But
then he realized, he doesn't actually have.
He's actually crap.
He's not actually that as creative as we thought. He must have figured the solution out a long time ago, and has just been riding on one solution to all problems.
And when that solution didn't work,
he lost.
Which on the field is going
Easily.
to happen.
Yeah.
He lost very easily. It was like that fight is an upset, not only because Will won it, because Will won it handily.
Yeah, and it effectively disqualified TK from going any further. Though he does actually put something of a humble streak in him.
Yeah,
not
it does
immediately.
Lead to character development will lead to him joining
the Argonauts.
In a future year.
After he's realized that both he's an asshole and that his powers, that there's such a versatile power that he wasn't using in a versatile manner.
Yeah. He found a good way to use it and stuck to it for way too long.
Yes. This arc is also probably where we get the first introduction to the Argonauts base, because I imagine that's where the at least the round of 16 applicants are brought into.
Either that or they have a very special.
Well, I mean, for where they're training and stuff.
Oh yeah, where they're training. Possibly.
At least a sub base.
Yeah,
I imagine. And this is where we just other minor things that come to mind when I'm thinking of this arc is we see a little bit of John Smith stuff. We encounter some of the non-combat applied John Smiths during this arc. They may be a couple of not even the doctors, probably a couple of the
I could see
people
one or two of the doctors.
One or two of the doctors, a couple of people doing accounting.
Characters that are necessary to be there are just John Smith.
Yeah. And also we established that for a lot of the main crew, it's very unsettling. And they're honestly quite happy to meet a consistent, or at least mostly consistent John Smith in the agent John Smith, who's actually been properly trained. Because some of them honestly
John
have
Smith that hangs around the base between missions.
Yes. Because honestly, one of the things that's unsettling to them is the substantial personality difference between John Smith trained as an agent and John Smith the accountant and John Smith the doctor and John Smith the recruiter and etc. etc. Because the government tends to just probably part of the deal for him working on them is that they tend to give jobs to the John Smiths who aren't even necessarily the ones that they
have to train one of them to do the job, right? And then copy them. Copy and paste.
But I mean, even a lot of the other John Smiths who weren't from that heritage tend to get government jobs. Partially because they like keeping an eye on him. Because again, he's one of those people where they have their count, but their count is one where they fully admit this is not the full count. These are the ones we are aware of that are under our employ. And it's several hundred, probably. Probably by the beginning of the show, probably only a few hundred.
it might be higher than that because he's been in them for.
Oh, that's
while.
true. He's been since
He
for like
doesn't
15
do
or
most
so
of his
years.
multiplication during the show. He does most of it before.
Oh, you're right, actually, because he's been there for like 15 or so years at this point, hasn't he?
Yeah, he's one of the more experienced.
Honestly, probably
members.
a couple thousand that they're aware of.
Yeah,
and then they admit for the full possibility of an unknown amount more that the other copies that they just don't have any kind of contact with may have generated.
he might be one of Sonny's peers, like joined around the same time that Sonny would have before World War III. Either that, or
I think he would have joined
after.
either after or midway or near the end of World War III, because I imagine honestly he's the youngest of the old guard.
Yeah,
He's
does a
the
lot
one
of
that
their
kind of-
operations. Though,
him and,
because most of the operations that don't require overkill.
That don't really require proper powers so much as just manpower.
Yeah,
Which is where his popular superhero name comes from.
he wins. He wins
Through manpower. And considerable skill and such, of course. He is probably one of the closer members in terms of sheer skill to Marcus, except his skill is more focused in terms of guns and equipment use and strategizing.
Yeah, he knows how to use whatever equipment they want.
And he also knows how to use the fact that he has a lot of people fairly well.
Yes, he is a good tactician.
Yeah.
Not merely a strategist, going through the difference between tactics.
Yeah,
and
so
strategy.
more tactics than strategies. He's not good at organizing a war, but he's good at organizing himself.
In a moment.
And this is where we probably not until the next arc that we encounter the question of whether or not the John Smiths have some form of other communication with each other.
They don't. We
don't
really
see enough
get a
of
lot
them.
of
We don't see enough of them in this arc.
personal time with him.
Yeah. Though, what else relates?
Because it's like the question is like because when they encounter a new John Smith, that new John Smith doesn't necessarily know who they are.
Necessarily. There's a decent chance he does. It just entirely depends on whether he was cloned after.
Cloned from someone who had already met them or not.
Yeah. And one of the questions that kind of gets raised, mostly in the next arc, but probably gets touched upon a little in this one, is the government even is unsure of whether the John Smiths have another means through which they communicate. Because they coordinate incredibly well. Potentially superhumanly well. Without needing to talk.
That might be from the fact that when the guy comes up with an idea for what
And
they're
then
gonna
makes
do,
clones, and they all have the same idea.
Yeah.
And they
It
simply...
might be pre-planned communication, basically.
Yeah, but they're not entirely sure.
He's too good at it out on the fly.
Yeah, they're like, but he is so good at the individual ones all come out knowing which part of the formation they should be. Which is suspicious. But could just be good for planning.
You might think left flank and then copy himself.
Yeah. They're not entirely sure. Is there anything else minor you'd want to add for this arc? Before we finish up? I think we've covered almost all of the bases.
Covered all the fights.
I remember one thing I wanted to bring up for this arc.
Yeah.
Oh, it may be beginning of next arc, maybe middle of this arc.
There's a bit of in between where they're just doing generic arguments.
But I honestly think one of the things I want to establish is that
introduced to the job.
whereas they don't have a danger room, so to speak, but through the combined powers of the senior members, they can effectively reach something similar. Gregor can simulate the weather and whatever else conditions. Hyperion generates illusions and laser type attacks. And John Smith generates the individual people necessary. So while they don't have a true danger room, they do have something resemblant when they all take their effort together to train people.
Just out of curiosity, this might be a little dark, but then at the same time, it may not be too dark.
Mm-hmm.
Is John Smith like their first kills each? Do they get that out of the way on a person that doesn't matter?
No, I honestly don't think they'd want to... Because the thing is, the individual John Smiths are full people. I think that's something that they probably...
But they're full people. They're so disposable.
Yes, but none of the main thing is that the John Smiths wouldn't agree to that. He wouldn't agree to be...
We don't know what's...
Well, not for something no stakes. That's the thing. I think he would fully agree to it if it was high stakes. He would be the kind of person who would if they needed someone to carry like a massive radioactive material somewhere, he would wholly volunteer for something like that, even knowing that his clone was going to die. And the clone, even knowing that it was going to actually be the one to die, would still do it. But I don't think he would volunteer for something like that for something as trivial as getting a first kill.
That's true. It's just it is
honestly. Also, Marcus probably already has a first kill.
No, not at that point. He wouldn't have killed anyone before joining the military.
Fighting the gangsters, he might have cracked someone's skull, dude.
Well, at least not a kill that he's aware of.
Fair enough.
And he did go for knockouts and stuff.
Yeah, he tries at least.
He wasn't stabbing them through with swords or anything.
No, he was mostly smacking them with.
He goes for a lot of blunt force.
Effectively, a blunt sword or bat.
Yeah. He actually captures a few of them with perfect handcuffs.
Yeah. Well then, I think that's everything for the first arc, the tournament arc. Thanks for listening, guys.
Leave any comment and subscribe and all that business if you liked it.
If you like it, if you don't, then don't, I suppose.
Feel free to ask questions.
Ask any questions you may have,
and we will start addressing questions in future videos once we start getting them.
Yeah, and leave any suggestions you may have. Anything, powers, plot points, anything you have is appreciated. And again,
don't remember in this week, possibly this week's challenge is figure out that last slot in the tournament.
Yes, in particular, if you have a power idea, please suggest it. Something I'll make for an interesting fight against
the electricity guy.
Against someone with electricity powers. And again, thanks for watching. It's unbelievably appreciated. And have a good day.
Have a good day. Yeah.